Alright guys, you just saw where I went to the Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum over there in Blue Ridge, Georgia. And actually that was a pretty good museum. You guys are going to have to check it out if you're in the area. But anyway, I want to give you my story. And it all kind of began after a drug rep. I'm a medical doctor. A drug rep came by my office and was asking me, he knew I liked to hunt. He says, "Dr. Eaton, did you see that article where that hunter saw a Bigfoot?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "A hunter saw a Bigfoot in North Alabama. Did you read about that?" I says, "No." And so he showed me the article, and apparently this hunter was sitting on a power line, and this Bigfoot came across and stopped at his corn feeder, messed around, and then walked on across. And so, that was pretty interesting. So that night, when I got home, I started, looking around on websites and researching Bigfoot stuff. And I happened to find a website that showed, state by state encounters. And so, of course, I looked up Alabama, and I saw where there were several encounters and sightings in Alabama. And some of them were pretty close to my home here. And then, of course, since I grew up in Mississippi, I said, I'm going to look up Mississippi. And there was an encounter. I grew up in Lowndes County, Mississippi. And as I looked down, it said Lowndes County, and I looked it up. Apparently, somebody had an encounter in Lowndes County, Mississippi, where I grew up on the Tombigbee River. And when I got to looking at the time frame, it was at the same time when I was hunting over there. So anyway, let me give you my story, and this will all come together. And, after, I started researching it, I started looking up different things about Bigfoot, and I saw something that said sounds of Bigfoot. So, I was curious, and you guys probably are curious about the sounds of Bigfoot. Some of you are probably experts out there and already know them. But as I would click on the sounds, like the first sound kind of sounded like some gibberish. I said, I've never heard that before. Then the next sound I heard sounded like a growl. And then, the next sound, some fast talking sounds. And then finally, I clicked on a sound, and it said howl. So as I listened to it, it went, "Roar!" I go, I recognize that sound. I've heard that sound. And so then I researched where the sound came from, and it was actually recorded in Mississippi, and that was the sound that I heard. So let me give you my story, and this is where this all comes together. All right. Well, when I was 15 years old, it was my first year to start hunting on my own. Just got my driver's license, so I was driving. My mom had bought me this bow, and I was looking for a nice place to hunt, so I got permission from this guy that had a little farm. And the opening day, I'd found this little hardwood slash, and I climbed a tree and ended up seeing 12 deer, and I killed my first deer with ever. It was a doe with a bow and arrow. And so, I was excited, and you guys would have been too. And so I went over the next day. I went to the gentleman's house to thank him for letting me hunt there and tell him about my hunt. And he just said, he goes, "Well, I don't think I want anybody hunting there anymore." Maybe he wanted to go hunt. So of course, me being 15, really didn't have no other place to hunt. I started looking around, and I found another little piece of property about a quarter of a mile from there that this old man owned. So I asked him for permission. He said, "Absolutely, you can hunt." He goes, "It's a bunch of hills and hollows, and he goes, nobody's been in those woods in years, but have at it." So anyway, it was a patch of woods that had a lot of hardwoods, white oaks. And so my brother, and a friend named Glenn went on a Tuesday afternoon. It was one of them beautiful, high, upper 60s, low 70s, perfect bow hunting weather. And so as we, now this was a big patch of woods, and a logging road went up through it. So as we went in, my brother, I put him off. We put Glenn off to the left first. We was about 100 yards in, and then went a little farther, put my brother to the right, and then I proceeded to go on to the, kept on going. I was probably, 300 yards down in the woods. And so anyway, I found this place where a ridge kind of came together, two ridges came together, and I felt like if I sat at that point, if deer were going to come through there, they'd walk that point. And so I had a climbing tree stand. I was up in the tree, and about, hour and a half before dark, I could hear something walking on the other side of the ridge. And it sounded like a man walking. Of course, these are dry leaves, and I'm listening, and I said, but I know it can't be a man because there's nobody supposed to be in here. And as I was listening, I couldn't see what was over that ridge, but I could hear it. And then I said, well, maybe it's a turkey. They kind of bipedal, and I'd listen, but I go, if it's a turkey, right at dark, they'll fly up on a roost. And then I was listening, and I said, maybe it's a squirrel. It could be a deer, but I sure don't sound like a deer or squirrel. It sounds like a man walking. So anyway, I kept looking in that direction, and as it starts getting dark, you notice how all the crickets start chirping real loud, and it drowns out the other sounds. I really couldn't hear as much detail of that footsteps. So as it got dark, I didn't see anything, and as I proceeded to climb down, as I got down, I started unhooking my tree stand from the tree, and then I could hear that walking over to my left. So I shined the light over there, and back then, you remember, we didn't have these nice flashlights. We had them little $2 flashlights you'd buy at a junior food mart. They weren't very good, but they still helped you. So I shined over there, didn't see nothing. So as I was unhooking the tree, I'd hear something, I'd shine over there, didn't see no eyes shine, nothing. So anyway, I got my stand unhooked, put it on my back, and I'm walking out. And about that time I hit the logging road again, I could hear this thing following me. And I said, what? Something's following me. And I said, what is it, a panther? Could it be a bobcat? Coyote? I'm like, so I'm shining the light looking, but I didn't see anything. So I started walking, and walking another 50 yards, and I could hear it, and I'd stop and look, and nothing. Didn't see nothing. And finally I started thinking, well, maybe it's the sound of my footsteps echoing on these hills and hollows as I'm walking. So as I'm walking, I could see in the path a place where there's no leaves. So maybe I can walk through there without making a sound. I can definitely hear what's behind me. So as I'm walking, I walk through this quiet place, and then I can definitely hear something is following me. So I turn around and I'm shining the light. I didn't see nothing, but I could definitely hear it. So now I'm starting to get concerned, and I'm starting to walk at a faster pace, and I'm thinking I'm going to get me an arrow out just in case. And I said, well, how are you going to shoot something in the dark, bow in your hand, flashlight? How are you going to draw the string? So I just kind of put the arrow back, and I kept on walking. And about that time, I could see my brother's light to the left, and then this thing that was behind me stopped. And then, so as I walk up to my brother, Glenn comes walking up, and we start, how it is when you see your hunting buddies. Hey, you see anything? And how was your hunt? And this and that. And then I said, hey, by the way, guys, as I was walking out, I could hear something following me. And they said, following you? I said, yeah, man, it was probably about 50 yards behind me. And, and I'd stop and shine a light. I never saw anything, but I can definitely hear it following me. And they just started laughing, kind of, blowing me off, So about that time, I looked in my bow quiver, and I could tell I had dropped my arrow. And back then, something that probably was $1.50 was about worth $30, So I said, I got to go get my arrow. These are some arrows my mom had just bought me. So I'm walking back up this trail, and I remember about a bend in that trail about the time I'd seen my brother, so that arrow should be about right there, and I'm shining the light, and there it is. So oh, good, I found my arrow. So I'm putting the arrow in the quiver, and about that time, this thing went, roar! That was that sound that I'd heard as I was listening to the sounds of Bigfoot. And man, when I heard that sound, I turned around and I started running. And I remember that tree stand was hitting me on the back of my head as I was running. And I looked up and I could see my brother's flashlight and Glenn's flash, they running too. And this thing, I could hear him running. Now here he comes, and he's not really behind me now. He's running kind of parallel to me. And then we make about 100 yards, and this thing yelled again, and he was much closer. And then we get to Glenn's, he was driving one of them old Chevrolet Blazers, you know, them big Blazers, but the window was broke out. So I'm going in the back window to climb in. My brother's going in the passenger door, and we're slamming doors. And then this thing, the last time it yelled, it was probably 15 foot behind the Blazer, and it was so loud, almost hurt our ears. And all I heard was gravel spinning, and we took off out of there, and we got down about a mile from down the road, and Glenn stopped, and we looked at each other, and we said, "What in the hell was that?" Now, excuse my language, but that's what we said. And we were sitting there, what in the heck was that? Was it a bear? And I said, no, it don't sound like no bear. Was it a bobcat? Nah, I don't sound like no bobcat. A mountain lion? You know, wasn't a man. A man couldn't make a sound like that. And we never did figure out what that sound was. And we just, like I said, this was back in the 70s. We kind of just quit talking about it and didn't think a whole lot about it from there. We never went back to those woods, I'll tell you that. And then, of course, that's when that drug rep, you know, sort of introduced me back to Bigfoot. And then as I was researching and I looked up the sounds of Bigfoot, that's when I heard that sound that I recognized. And Sherry and I actually was on a Finding Bigfoot episode, and it was Bama Bigfoot, even though we were in Mississippi. You know, when Matt Moneymaker, when I gave my story and he heard that sound, he goes, "That's Mississippi Howl." And of course, it's a kind of recognized sound now. A lot of people have recorded it. But anyway, so whether that was a Sasquatch or Bigfoot, you know, and I don't know if I'm truly a believer, but if you wanted to ask me, well, what do you think they are? I'm going to say they are something supernatural. I don't think they're flesh, even though a lot of footprints have been found, and it'd be hard to dispute that would be something supernatural. But I'm just going by what I kind of think, and you know, me being, you know, a preacher, I kind of feel like everything has to be based off of Scripture. And Nephilim in Genesis 6 are there. There's Nephilim in, I think, Numbers 13. Caleb and Joshua saw giants. You know, but then, you know, God, I think, talked to Joshua and Caleb and instructed them to destroy the Amalekites or Anak, or that were giants. So that's maybe why we don't see them today. But anyway, there's thousands of sightings every year. So obviously people are seeing something. And I think, again, I think there's something supernatural. They might be something, demons, fallen angels, but you know, maybe one day there'll be proof that they are of flesh, and that would be kind of cool to me if they really are. But I'm just saying what I think they are, because there's a lot of encounters where Bigfoot and aliens are tied together. So, but anyway, that's my story, and if any of you guys have had an encounter, I'd love to see it in the comments. And I appreciate you guys following, you know, the Eaton Clinic Outdoors. You guys are special. I think about you. I pray for you guys every day, all of you that have subscribed and liked and disliked or commented. I pray for you guys, and I love you guys, and can't wait to see you soon on another video.